Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel, Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron, and I'm back as promised with part 3 of our UrbanMech Shootout. So tonight we will look at the UM-R90. This is also called the SuburbanMech. So is it an urban mech or is it a suburban mech? Or is it an urban mech that is nicknamed the SuburbanMech? You tell me. I don't know. But what I will tell you is the SuburbanMech is like the Acura of urban mechs. Urban mechs are just your regular old Hondas. The SuburbanMech is definitely your luxury line. This thing comes in at a whopping 773 battle value. It was produced in 3018, so it's like 400 years of lessons learned of urban mechs exploding all over the battlefield, and they decided that they were going to do something about it, so they created the SuburbanMech. This thing moves faster. It's a 353, so no longer does it race annihilators, and instead now races stalkers for supremacy. It has 13 heat sinks, all standard stuff, and we are at 6 tons of armor, so that's 96 pips, 91.4% total coverage. And just a quick glance at the distribution there in the center. Those arms are looking pretty good, re-beefed up from that R60L, which was just stripped across the board. And otherwise looks pretty good in terms of distribution. I need to look here and double check, but I do believe that this thing has full head armor as well. So potentially they care about SuburbanMech pilots, unlike just regular old urban mech pilots. The jokes write themselves, guys. So this thing also has only upper arm actuators. It can arm flip. And then the armament, so very different from what we've seen. It's got a PPC. It has a pair of medium lasers. And it has a small laser as well. So this thing definitely equipped very, very differently than its urban mech buddies, as it were, the R60 and R60L. So right out of the gate, I mean, I'm sure you know, like, I like this mech much better. I like the range. I like the fact that it's got a pair of medium lasers for backup. Yes, it still has that garbage small laser, but no ammo. Could be a good one. Could be our winner. Guys, let's dive in. UM-R90, SuburbanMech. It's coming right up. All right, so here it is. We're going to dive in. Offensive benchmarks. This is interesting. So, I mean, the damage, of course, is abysmal because it's an urban mech or a derivative thereof, but it's not so bad as far as urban mechs go. So the first thing I notice in our red line benchmark is we actually have like a pulse. We have some activity. This thing can actually start building up heat, and it can do so right when those medium lasers come into play. And there's a pair of them. They're mounted in, I believe, the left torso, if I'm not mistaken. Where basically adjacent to the small laser. And once those things come into range, you can build up 4 points of heat per turn. That's if it's walking. If it's running, it could be more. And then when that small laser comes into play, you can tack another point of heat on top of that. So as I like to say, heat is our currency for damage. So we just have to figure out how to manipulate that, to the best firing pattern to deliver the most amount of damage. Basically where we ended up is 86.9 points of damage. The other two urban mechs were at 60 and around 55 respectively. So this is a substantial jump in the urban mech world. It is the envy of urban mech pilots everywhere. Let's talk about lethality on this guy. So another improvement, 35.8% of the time it's killing the javelin. Now, that means that it's killing it hands down 35.8% of the time within 12 turns. On average, the average time to kill is just beyond that at 13 and a half turns, which is 2 turns better than the R60L and almost 4 turns better, if not maybe more than 4 turns better than the R60. So this thing definitely looking sharp. Damage per hit isn't too shabby at 7.2. The PPC, medium lasers, they do pretty good there. Critical hits is actually higher than its predecessors as well, because you have more gun barrels downrange, more hits, more potential chances for criticals, so on and so forth. What's also interesting is this actually has more head kills than the AC-20 variant, the R60L, and I think that is also a byproduct of just having more guns. So you might hit it with 2 medium lasers, you might hit it with a PPC and then a medium laser, whatever. You're just generating more chances when you have more guns. It's the way Classic works. So that's that. Now, again, we talked about the heat. It can generate 5 points of heat at 3 inches, right? Once that small laser comes into range, that's the most you can generate per trigger pull. So not too bad. Now, that's lethality and damage. It's not great, but again, it's a 30-ton mech, so I think it's not terrible. Let's take a look at the defense. Maybe this thing can hold its own. Maybe it can survive. It would be exciting, but we'll see. Still an UrbanMech. Yep, still an UrbanMech. Slightly better UrbanMech, as it survived 2.9% of the time, but still an UrbanMech in that survivability category. Just amazing. They're too slow for small mechs. I mean, they just can't sustain that level of punishment. Speed is life. It says it somewhere in the BattleTech rulebook. So let's take a look at the Armour Diagnostic. So a couple of things here. The yellow bars, again, representing our expected average. It's a little under in the torso regions. Basically that takes that armor, puts it on the arms. I'll take that trade. I think that's a smart trade. And it's really like you're talking a pip at these armor levels. Legs are on spec, rear is way over spec. So I mentioned this, I believe, on the R60 or the R60L, that I thought it was a good idea to over armor the rear in such a way. In this one, I don't know. I'm a little torn about it, because when I look at the distribution, so this is another one where it's got 4, in the rear, like 4 on the sides, 8 in the center. It's still slow. There's still going to be a lot of things in your rear arc, but this loadout doesn't seem to be the same type of high-rise city dweller that the other 2 UrbanMechs are, right? I mean, those are the ones you imagine marching down Main Street, flanked by these giant buildings that are blocking line of sight. This guy, you picture him just sort of frolicking through suburbia, 1-2 story houses, firing its PPC and just using, Mr. Jones's house as partial cover. I mean, it's not really the same type of battlefield that you would put the SuburbanMech in. So in that regard, that's my long way of saying I think the armor in the rear is potentially a waste here. You probably could redistribute some of those pips back to the front to bring those other torso segments up to spec, but it's neither here nor there. Let's talk about mobility. It still sucks. It is 23.1% of the time you're going to get a motive hit. However, at a 3.5, both your walking and your running TMM, target mod, whatever you want to call it, improves by 1. So now when you walk, you're getting a +1. When you run, you can claim a +2. When you jump, you're claiming a +2. That's big. Again, we're talking a 2d6 probability curve. These things make a huge difference, and that contributes to the massive 2.9% survivability. But what you'll notice if you look back to the old survivability curve and this one, the R60, the R60L had a much sharper drop off. This one actually holds form pretty well until you get into that turn 8, turn 9 range, and that's when it really starts to dip off. Once you're a lot closer. So, is what it is there. Ammo, obviously, 0%, no ammo on board, which I love. It's very rare you see any engine deaths from this thing. Most of the time, it's just getting its whole centered structure blown out the back and just blown to pieces. So it is what it is. I mean, it's got a little bit more armor. It's got a little bit more speed. If you can keep it at range, I think you can keep this thing alive. You just rely on your PPC and kind of run it around like a goofy, like little thing, little sniping pillbox on legs. But let's take a look at efficiency. This is the drum roll. Is it going to be better than the R60? We know the R60L was crap. That was like 0.27. I think the R60 was like 1.63. Let's see where this one lands. All right, here it is. Survey says 3.51, not bad. So this one is by far more efficient than the other two. Now, I can already hear the controversy. I can already hear people posting nasty comments about how Battlytics favors long-range weapons. But guys, that's the way the game is played. If you can shoot sooner and you can get damage on mech sooner, you're going to get a return on investment. If I have to wait until I'm at 9 hexes to fire my AC-20 and I'm in a walking bomb with 4 tons of armor on it, chances are you may not even get a shot off. And so that's what this is really looking at. I think the other big thing here is the speed differential. 3.5 may not sound very fast, but when you compare it to 2.3, it's really fast. I mean, it's 1.5 times faster, right? I mean, it's substantial. So damage loss here is still pretty bad, 56.3%. I mean, it's seeing the same problems, right? 2.9% survivability. They're slow, they're under armored, but this thing is able to get some damage in the back end there before it tails off and dies. In terms of gunnery sensitivity, 0.585. I mean, that's not bad. It's not great. Your average, like the average we see, I would say the average where I would start to think about increasing gunnery is around a 0.7. This one, not very sensitive, 50-50, right? I mean, you can get a little bit more out of a better pilot, but I don't know why you would want to spend, for example, 1,200 points on a Gunnery 1 UrbanMech. 1,000 points on a Gunnery 2 UrbanMech also sounds silly. I mean, I'd probably do, I typically play Gunnery 3. I don't know that I would do Gunnery 4 because you do need to use that PPC. You do need to be able to hit with it to get your return at all. You can see at Gunnery 4, I mean, the damage is pretty low, 17.20 over 12 turns. You're not hitting very much with that PPC. So I would say, Gunnery 3 is probably a sweet spot for this particular mech. Otherwise, you run the risk of just throwing the whole 700 points away and not getting anything out of it. So that's basically the efficiency. Let's talk about rolls. It's a little bit different in terms of how I would play this mech versus the AC variants. So let's talk about that. All right, so basically, what I said was second line mech. Start out of the gate with roll. This is the kind of mech I would hang in the back, just shoot your PPC, provide some very light fire support on other mechs. You're moving fairly slow anyway if you need to be stationary for a turn because nobody's looking at you. Like, whatever, it's fine. Get your gunnery, mod, more in your favor. You can do that. Or you can just keep this thing kind of chugging along behind your front line, providing some shots downrange. Once the enemy's depleted, once they're damaged, once they're focused on, that big target, that big meaty Wolverine or whatever it is that's in your lance, that's when you can move this thing in and get those medium lasers in play. I would not bank on ever using the small laser. And in fact, if you're playing customization rules, I'd rip that thing off the mech and put more armor on. That would be me, but that's just a thought there. Now, in terms of firing arc, let's just remember one thing: that PPC can fire 360 degrees, so can the small laser. But the PPC having that sort of range of motion is very important. I think you can protect. If you take a really wicked shot to one side torso, you can turn away and face your weak or even your rear, because it does have so much rear armor, and just fire backwards as you retreat or doing whatever it is that SuburbanMechs do in their free time. We talked a little bit about the heat during the damage assessment there, the damage benchmarks. It can build up heat. You can build up 4 points of heat when the medium lasers are in range, 5 if you're alpha striking, right, firing everything and moving. ACD cap 71.3%. So what that means is if you're at, point blank range, right, basically 3 inches is where it's the highest. You could do 23 points of damage if you alpha strike, right, and you hit everything. You would do 23 points of damage. However, your average calculated damage is 16.4, and so that means that when you roll the dice and you're at that range, right, PPC, all of these weapons, right, factoring in all the range penalties and mods, you would do on average 16.4 points of damage. That's with, again, a Gunnery 2 pilot. That's the way we do the math on this stuff. But that would adjust down or up as you saw, on that efficiency screen. So is that good? Is it bad? It just means that there's not a lot of splash damage, right? You're not seeing any missiles. A lot of that stuff will bring that ACD cap down. But there's really not much to say there. I like the big chunk damage coming out of the PPC. I'm a big fan of medium lasers. I think they're great for this era. But that's about it. That's the SuburbanMech. So when we think about the R60, the R60L, and the R90, the R90 is the far superior machine. It's faster. It's got better range. It's got more armor. It can jump further. It can do a lot more things. And it's more efficient, even though it does cost a couple hundred more BB. At the end of the day, 200 BB is like nothing, right? Even adjusted up for gunnery, it's still much better. I do think there's a place for the R60L and the R60 if you want to put trash pilots in them and just fill out a fun force, or if you're playing an RPG or anything along those lines. It's a great mech to use. But in a more competitive environment, I don't think really any of these mechs have a place. But if I had to pick one, my vote would go to the R90 in just about every scenario. Even in an inner city match, I think I would take the R90 and just try to find firing lanes down roads and things along those lines. But anyway, that's it, guys. UrbanMech Madness is over. I hope you enjoyed this crazy comparo series that we did. I hope you leave a comment, leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe. It always helps out the channel. If you want to help out the channel more, you can do a super thanks, which is like a tip right through YouTube, or you can join us on Patreon. There's a few tiers out there for you to check out. And of course, don't forget to check out Aries Games and Minis, guys. They got the miniatures, they got the dice, they got the books, they got the novels, they've got terrain, everything you need, box sets. And Derek's great, ships real fast. So definitely check those out for all your BattleTech needs. Head on over to Aries Games and Minis. But that's it. I'm all done. Guys, I hope you enjoyed watching this. Thank you so much. And of course, stay tuned. Always great stuff coming from Death from Above Wargaming. Have a good night.